The rain had just stopped when the little girl stepped onto the wide marble steps of the concert hall. Water dripped from the carved stone lions guarding the entrance, and the city lights shimmered in the puddles like broken stars. She stood there for a moment, hugging a worn violin case to her chest, her thin coat doing little to keep out the cold. Her shoes were too big, her sleeves frayed, but her eyes were steady. They had learned long ago how to stay that way. Inside, the hall buzzed with wealth and comfort. Men in tailored suits laughed loudly, women in elegant dresses checked their reflections on their phones, and servers glided across the floor with trays of sparkling drinks. This was a charity gala, though the word charity seemed almost ironic in a room where watches cost more than houses and a single painting on the wall could feed a family for years. The girl slipped in quietly, unnoticed at first. She moved along the edge of the room, her gaze drawn to the grand piano standing on the stage under warm golden lights. It looked like something out of a dream, polished, perfect, untouchable. She swallowed hard and tightened her grip on the violin case. At the center of the room stood Victor Hale, the man everyone wanted to impress. He was a self-made millionaire, known for his sharp tongue and sharper mind. He wore confidence like armor, smiling easily, speaking loudly, always surrounded by admirers. Tonight, he was in especially high spirits. A recent business victory had added another zero to his already enormous fortune, and he enjoyed reminding people of it. When Victor noticed the little girl, it was only because she stood out so clearly against the polished crowd. She looked like a smudge of charcoal on a canvas of gold. He frowned slightly, then laughed, nudging the man beside him. "Is this part of the entertainment?" he said loudly, his voice carrying across the room. A few heads turned. Some smiled. Others looked uncomfortable. The girl froze. Every eye seemed to land on her at once. Heat rushed to her face, but she didn't run. She had learned not to. Victor stepped closer, his shoes gleaming. He crouched slightly to her level, examining her like a curiosity. "What's your name, little one?" he asked, though his tone suggested he didn't really care. "Lena," she said softly. "And what brings you here, Lena?" He tapped the violin case with a finger. "Planning to perform for us." A few people chuckled. Someone whispered that security should escort her out. Another murmured something about the audacity of street kids these days. Lena nodded slowly. "I was told there might be a chance," she said. "To play." Victor raised an eyebrow, amused. "A chance." He straightened and glanced around theatrically. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "it seems we have a surprise guest." Laughter rippled through the crowd. He looked back down at her, a grin spreading across his face. "Tell you what," he said, his voice dripping with mock generosity. "You play something for us. If I'm impressed, I'll adopt you." The room went quiet for a beat, then erupted in laughter. Some people clapped ironically. Others shook their heads, embarrassed on her behalf. To them, it was a joke, another display of Victor Hale's arrogance. Lena didn't laugh. She stared at him, trying to understand the words. "Adopt you." The phrase echoed in her mind, colliding with memories she kept buried deep. A small room with peeling paint. A mother's tired smile. The sound of coughing in the night. A promise whispered and never kept. "Okay," she said simply. That surprised him. Victor blinked. "You agree?" he asked. She nodded again. "Yes." There was something in her voice that made him pause, just for a fraction of a second. But pride pushed the feeling away. He waved a hand toward the stage. "Go on then," he said. "Let's hear it." Someone handed her a chair. Another person, perhaps out of pity, placed a music stand in front of her. She shook her head gently. "No music," she said. The whispers grew louder. Victor leaned back, crossing his arms, clearly entertained. Lena opened her violin case slowly. The instrument inside was old, its varnish scratched, the strings worn. Anyone who knew violins could see it had been repaired many times, lovingly but imperfectly. She lifted it with care, as though it were something alive. She closed her eyes before placing it under her chin. For a moment, nothing happened. The room felt suspended, as if even the air was holding its breath. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft, almost fragile, like footsteps on fresh snow. The laughter died instantly. Conversations faded. Heads turned fully toward the stage. The sound was not loud, not flashy, but it was clear, pure, and painfully honest. The melody unfolded slowly, telling a story without words. It spoke of loneliness, of long nights and empty rooms, of waiting by windows for someone who never came. Lena's fingers moved with quiet confidence, drawing emotions from the strings that seemed far too deep for a child her age. Victor's smile faltered. He had heard world-class musicians before. He had paid obscene amounts of money to listen to orchestras perform in private halls. But this was different. There was no showmanship here, no ego. Just truth. The music grew stronger, weaving sorrow with hope, pain with resilience. It rose and fell like breath, like a heart refusing to stop beating no matter how heavy the world pressed down on it. People in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. A woman dabbed at her eyes. A man lowered his glass, forgotten. Even the servers stood still, trays trembling slightly in their hands. Victor felt something tighten in his chest. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just a trick of atmosphere, a sentimental reaction. But the sound cut through him, bypassing logic, slipping straight into places he had locked away long ago. He saw flashes of his own past, of nights spent alone in a too-big house, of a childhood defined by ambition and absence rather than warmth. He remembered the piano lessons he had quit because winning had seemed more important than feeling. Lena played on. The final part of the piece was lighter, almost playful, like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. It carried a quiet belief that even after everything, joy was still possible. That life, no matter how cruel, could still offer beauty. When the last note faded, it lingered in the air like a whisper. Silence filled the hall. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, applause began, not loud at first, but real. It grew and grew until the room was filled with it, a standing ovation rising spontaneously. People clapped with tears on their faces, some openly sobbing, others smiling through emotion they didn't quite understand. Lena lowered her violin and looked out at the crowd, unsure of what to do next. She searched for Victor. He stood frozen, his arms no longer crossed, his face pale. The confident billionaire who had mocked her minutes earlier looked like a man who had just been stripped bare in front of everyone. She waited. Victor cleared his throat, but no words came out. He tried again, stepping toward the stage. His voice cracked. He stopped, visibly startled by the sound of it. He had not expected to feel anything, let alone this. He looked at the girl, really looked at her, and for the first time noticed the faint bruise on her wrist, the careful way she held herself, as though the world might take something from her if she wasn't vigilant. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked quietly. "My mother taught me," Lena said. Before she got sick. Something twisted inside him. "And your father?" he asked. She shook her head. "I never knew him." The room felt smaller somehow, more intimate. Victor swallowed. "You understand," he said slowly, "that what I said before, it was meant as a joke." Lena nodded. "I know." Her calm acceptance was worse than anger would have been. "But," she added softly, "I still played my best." That did it. Victor turned away, pressing a hand to his face as if suddenly overwhelmed. He took a long breath, then faced her again, his expression changed, stripped of arrogance. "I don't deserve that," he said. "What you gave us." He glanced around the room, aware of the eyes on him, but for once, he didn't care. "I was wrong," he said clearly. "And I'm sorry." The word sorry felt foreign on his tongue, but also necessary. He looked back at Lena. "What happens to you after tonight?" he asked. She hesitated. "I go back," she said. "To the shelter." Something inside Victor settled, heavy and undeniable. He nodded once, as though making a decision that would ripple far beyond this moment. "Then I'd like to talk to you," he said gently. Not as a joke. Not as a challenge. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But as a promise I intend to keep." The crowd held its breath again, sensing something important unfolding. Lena studied his face, searching for something, truth, perhaps, or sincerity. Whatever she saw there made her straighten slightly. "Okay," she said. For the first time that night, Victor Hale smiled without pride. And though neither of them knew it yet, the music that had filled the hall had already changed the course of both their lives forever.